So as we've experienced, Christmas really there's two Christmases in our country. There's the consumer Christmas, which began 2 days ago, but I thought, because when Black Friday was originally begun, it was like 6 a.m., then 4 a.m., and then 2 a.m., and then 12:01 a.m., and my wife said, actually, they just started on Thursday afternoon this year. So there's no Black Friday anymore. It's just taken over. And, of course, tomorrow is Cyber Monday, and also every single day you're going to see in the newspaper how many days you have left to consume, right? And, of course, you'll get all kinds of stuff in the mail with some fantastic sales that you can't live without. So that's the consumer side of things. We've got the Christian church side of things when it comes to Advent and Christmas. And it begins today. Today's the first day of the year for the church calendar. I don't know if you know that. It always begins 4 Sundays before Christmas Day. So today's the first day of the year in the church calendar and the first Sunday of Advent. It emphasizes hope, as you heard from the reading of the lighting of the candle. Each week has a different emphasis that will look at faith and joy and love as well. But today is hope. And special events, gosh, we have all kinds of things. You got all the announcements, the concerts, the cantatas, the Advent wreath making, parties, just all kinds of opportunities for us to try to share in the preparation that we give to celebrating appropriately Christmas Day. So this is the most joyous season of the year. It's also the most misunderstood season of the year because you have this consumerism on one side and this Christian church on the other side, and they're a little bit in conflict. Around us is all this evidence. You just look out the window anywhere, buying, acquiring, purchasing, or the way I like to put it, spending, crediting, and overextending is what people are doing right now. But like an Amish buggy at Costco, the church painstakingly encourages us to slow down. Restrain yourself. Pause. Sit. Think. Take time to consider what it is that you're supposed to be doing at Advent. That doesn't mean consuming. What are you supposed to do during Advent from the church's perspective? The church doesn't want you or me to arrive late or unprepared to Advent, because we believe that the message of Christmas goes much further than another gift under the tree. Mary gives us several insights into this deeper meaning of Christmas, because on Christmas Eve, we certainly look through Mary's eyes at a little baby infant, but I think what she does is gives us a deeper insight as we consider her whole life. And today we start with her final years. What do you know about the end of Mary's life? What are those memories, those influence that Jesus had on her, and what effect did they have in her life, you think? So you got to put yourself in a mother's perspective and one of older age, looking back, all right? So there's a gross understatement that I'll begin with, that Protestants don't have the adoration for Mary that Catholics do. All of you with Catholic friends or have grown up Catholic, you understand that. Anyone who has traveled has seen in any Catholic church probably a statue of Mary. In fact, the Protestants are the ones that came up with this word. It wasn't really a compliment. It's a type of study, Mariolatry. But it was a bit negative because the Protestants were saying this is Mary worship. In fact, what they're really talking about is excessive veneration of Mary when they say Mariolatry. And certainly Protestants think that Catholics have taken this whole Mary thing to an extreme. It not only may distract us from worshiping God, but it may border on idolatry from a Protestant perspective. Anyway, I was just having a couple of talks with people in the narthex about traveling, particularly through Europe and especially Italy. Any little tiny church you go into, probably a Catholic church, obviously the very large churches, have all kinds of artwork, architecture, sculptures about Mary. In fact, she's even been given a different name, which is certainly theologically challenging, which is Theotokos, which means bearer of God or mother of God. So you've got to try to find in your mind's eye, what does all of this about Mary really mean to us today? Because there's nothing in the Bible that's mentioned about Mary's death or her final years. This is the last thing we hear about Mary. That's the Ascension. So you're thinking this one verse is telling us all we know from Scripture, and it's just right after the Ascension and right before the incoming of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, when it says that Mary was with the others. It's an assumption that Mary was there for the Ascension on Mount of Olives. So they were on the Mount of Olives from where he ascended. There's a big church there and such. They go down the Kidron Valley and go to Jerusalem. And the Scripture says they all were gathered for prayer. The assumption is that Mary was on the Mount of Olives, right? So everything we know about Mary in her final years is by tradition. And it's in the first centuries, and it's the beginning of the what is the Catholic Church at that time, as it's being established. And so Catholics and Eastern Orthodox think very highly of these traditions. What's interesting is that Protestants don't think very highly of them. And there's been some lot of theological arguing on what really happened, even between the Catholics and the Orthodox. The Catholics believe August 15th is a day commemorating Mary's death. They both agree on that. Catholics call it the Feast of Assumption. To be assumed means you've been taken up. That's the formal term, is the Assumption. And Ascension would mean the same thing. And they don't believe that Mary ever died. She was assumed. So there are a couple of people in the Scriptures that didn't die. Mary's one of them. From a Catholic perspective, it'd be interesting to ask your friend to share with you some of their thoughts on that. Eastern Orthodox take a different position. They think Mary died. To them, it's called the, what is it called? It's called the Feast of Dormition, because Dormition means sleep. So that Mary died, but it was kind of this sleep for only 3 days. In fact, the story, it's kind of funny, because the story is that Mary, when she was on her deathbed, she, through the power of the Holy Spirit, wanted all the disciples to come to her bedside. This is in the Gospel of James, which is an apocryphal book. All the disciples are there, including the Apostle Paul, who's not one of the 12 disciples. Thomas is missing, and she dies. She's put in a grave. Thomas comes 3 days later. And they roll the stone away. No body. The body's been taken up. This is the Eastern Orthodox point of view. So there's a difference between the Catholic view and the Eastern Orthodox as to what assumption or ascension or taken up means. And you can see this in all kinds of art. It's really interesting to me. I mean, I just gave you some examples right there. Here's a typical, that's in Chartres, here's a typical Ascension of Mary where it's still attached to the ground. There's some, it's trying to, sometimes you have some disciples there because someone's around, they say, but then you have angels. This one's a little more graphic because there's separation. See all the people down below? And then the sculptor put her in the air already with angels allowing her to be ascended. In art, it's the same thing. You'll see somehow the artist is trying to say, how do I show an ascension, an action taking place in a still motion? So you have the man disciples on the ground, the angels in the air, Mary's kind of on a cloud, And then here's another example of the separation. So, but the whole point is about the ascension here. And so the thought is that Mary died when she was about 60. Let me see what's next. We'll go back. So she's about 60 years old. Some say 59, some 64. Let's round it to 60. So that's the thought. She's 60 years old. And where? Jerusalem. Well, some people think she's right next to the Garden of Gethsemane, buried in a cave there. Other people think it's at this place right here, which is near Ephesus, which is where I was last July with Dee Dee, but not here. We didn't go here. It's about 7 miles away, and it's the house of the Virgin Mary, where they think, and a couple just said they were there. And they said, it's interesting, there was a fire down below, and it got to about 50 yards of this. It's on top of a mountain, and the fire stopped. Didn't affect any of this. Divine intervention? Don't know. But they said that they were just there. And so here's a place that they say Mary spent her final years. Because you remember, probably a good argument here, Jesus told John to take care of Mary. It's pretty good evidence that John spent his last days in Ephesus. So he probably had his appointed mother with him. So it might be that she was in Ephesus. Whether you believe any of these traditions, whether you're pushing for the Catholic position, the Orthodox position, Protestant position, it doesn't matter. They all believe one thing, and that's the emphasis of the day, the resurrection of the dead. All of them. All the traditions believe in the resurrection of the dead. And as we begin this Advent season, especially on this Communion Sunday, we're reminded that Christmas is inextricably related to Easter. God's greatest gift is not just the child's birth, but that 3 decades later, that child would conquer death. This helpless little baby, whose birthday we celebrate on December 25th, later said, I am the resurrection and the life. Now we know that Mary was at the crucifixion. Jesus spoke to her. We're not so sure that she was at the resurrection. She might have been. We know Mary Magdalene was. We know some other women named Mary were, and we know some other women were probably there. Maybe Mary, the mother of Jesus, it just doesn't say specifically that she was there. Okay? But we do know that Mary was either right at the Ascension in the Mount of Olives or right after it, as all of those who were there participated in prayer and gathered together. So the assumption is that they were all together, and they just went over to the house because he was gone, and they prayed about it. What would you do if you just saw Jesus ascending? I would certainly pray about it. So there's an understanding of what's happening here with Mary, that she saw and experienced Jesus' resurrection from the dead. The evidence of resurrection. I don't know, we got in a big talk in the narthex about theologically, when did the resurrection take place? At the moment of death, or is it the body, the spirit? I'm just saying the evidence was he was there. And she saw his departure from the earth. So most scholars agree that at around 60 years old. So the big question I have for you, and I've never considered this before reading this little book by Adam Hamilton that he wrote about 4 or 5 years ago. What do you think Mary did for the last 15 years of her life? Do the math. She's probably living 15 years after the crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension. It all happens within 40 days. What do you think she did? She's the mother of Jesus. What would you do? How would you live? How is your life influenced by not only being the mother, but having seen what you just saw for 15 years? Look on your bulletin if you want, or up here there's a great quote that Hamilton gives us. The appearance of Jesus to Mary after his death would have changed everything for her. She still would have carried the grief of his suffering with her. She was there at the crucifixion, we know that. She would have carried the sense of separation and loss that any of us would feel after the death of someone so close to us. But the resurrection, we can be sure, changed how Mary experienced her grief. It gave her hope. That's the theme of our Advent, hope. We all need hope. Everyone in this room, just like Mary, we all experience some level of grief. Some worse than others, but no one in this room is spared. No matter what situation you find yourself in, maybe this is the first Christmas that you're spending without your loved one. Or maybe you know someone. And it is the hardest Christmas ever. That's why we have our Blue Christmas for people. And Anne's teaching that course for 4 weeks. It's very difficult for people. And you should think about how you can help them in that situation. Maybe you're carrying some kind of relentless grief in your heart that just won't be healed. Perhaps you're at a stage of life, whether it be age or whether it be health, that you're wondering if this will be the last Christmas for you. I just was on the phone yesterday with my mother who had a freezer accident where the door of a freezer somehow crushed her foot. She's 91. Her whole leg's swollen, and so we're going down there right after Christmas to visit her. But those are those kind of things that you have to question. We all need hope. And each year the focus of this Sunday is hope. The resurrection news, the reason Jesus came into the world in the first place, is the message of hope for each of us as we celebrate his birth. But as good as it is to know about hope in our lives, how does this hope make a difference in how you live your life? How did it make a difference, you think, in Mary's final years? In her last 15 years? Have you ever thought about it? What was Mary doing for those 15 years after seeing her resurrected son? Now you remember, very important, her last sight of him was not suffering on a cross, but his resurrection of ascension. Her last memory of him was not one of despair, but one of hope. And when that's the case, how did she spend her final years? I would agree with Hamilton that Mary would have continued to do the things that Jesus told his followers to do. To look for people who are like lost sheep and bring them back to God. To find those who are hungry and thirsty and sick and naked and imprisoned and care for them. To let her light so shine before others that they might see her good works and give glory to her Father in heaven. That's the verse we used last week, isn't it? For our stewardship. Let your light shine was just sung. To love her neighbor and to love her enemy. And to do things Jesus called all disciples to do. Don't you think Mary would have devoted her final years to doing some of those things? This is what it means to be people of hope who let Jesus' light shine through them for others to see God's glory. This is what Mary would have done, I think. This is what each of us should be doing. to live out our hope and our faith of Jesus' resurrection, especially as we celebrate his birth, of his coming in Advent and on Christmas Day. So I want you to get your bulletin out and see the bottom portion right there. Because what I want you to do is cut this out, stick it on your refrigerator. Someone told me at Wednesday that they went to a church and the minister said, they tell us what to do. Take out the garbage for your neighbor. And I'm going to tell you what to do. This is your Advent challenge. How will you offer hope to a person who doesn't have any? You believe in it, right? How are you going to act it out? Your face this Christmas might be the only light shining the good news of Jesus on that person for the whole Christmas season. How will you offer a word of hope? Long conversation, almost made me late coming in here on this one right here. How it's free. You don't have to buy it to offer a word of encouragement, a word of hope to someone else, linking the faith that the Easter resurrection has to do with the birth of this child. How will you offer hope in a specific gift to who? Someone in need, but it's got to be someone you've never met before. If your Advent preparation doesn't include serving the poor in some specific way, and I think Mary would have done all this, and this is what I get out of Mary's final years, and hope you do too. If we don't do something at Advent, then we've missed out on the part of our celebration of Jesus coming at Christmas. And I think that's what this table is all about. I think this table is saying, express your faith in what you know his resurrection provides for you, the hope you have in life. Express it every time you come to this table. And then live it. Do something at Advent.